Hey everybody, welcome to a second broadcast of Talk with Tanya. I'm actually not broadcasting live this video since one of my friends came on just seconds before I was ready to start, and I've been prepping for this all day, so we're just going to go ahead and get this one on YouTube. Hopefully you enjoy it. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to leave those on YouTube, or you can always find me at facebook.com/nailgirlsalon. That is my business page. I am a nail professional, have been for 26, going on 27 years. And so you're probably wondering, why are we in your kitchen instead of in your salon? My goal for 2016 was to share with people the things that go on in the salon out there with you. We talk about all kinds of stuff in there. I'm sometimes a therapist, sometimes I'm a life coach, sometimes I'm a great Google searcher of figuring out information and answering questions. My clients come to me to find out information, to talk about all kinds of topics, and so my goal for 2016 was to share that with you. So this particular video I wanted to do regarding the fact that a year ago I adopted a paleo lifestyle. Now, a paleo lifestyle isn't for everybody, but hopefully moving towards a more nutritious, whole food way of eating is. You would be surprised at the stuff that is in our food supply these days. So, I wanted to share with you a little bit of my weekly prep, some of what I do, hopefully making it a little bit easier for you if you decide that you want to do something like this. I want to start out by sharing a couple of pieces of information that were really helpful for me getting started. The first book I read was It Starts with Food. Very informative, helped me understand what some of the food I was eating was doing to my body. My prescription list was growing exponentially, and I really didn't want to keep adding between high blood pressure, a kidney disorder, polycystic ovary syndrome. The list was getting long, and I really didn't care for it. If there was something I could do to make it better, that's what I wanted to do. And that book answered a lot of information for me about what was happening to my body. So I decided to do a paleo lifestyle, and I've stayed pretty true to it. My husband and my daughter are kind of sometimes 50-50, 80-20. It just depends on the given week and what they have going on, but I'm pretty dedicated to it. And in a year, I've seen some tremendous, amazing results. So when I started, it was extremely overwhelming. I have a very busy life, a very busy schedule, and the idea of trying to jam something into it, we were fast food people living on not even Taco Bell and Burger King kind of things, but we were living on faster prepared meals, but we were going out for them or picking them up pre-prepared at the grocery store. Now everything I make is from scratch, and so I'm going to share a little bit of that today. Two of my essentially Bibles getting started. Well Fed. She made it possible for me to realize that I can do a week, sometimes 2 and 3 weeks worth of meal prep at once and save myself wanting to pull my hair out from cook, dishes, clean, repeat. The next one I want to mention, Nom Nom Paleo. She is the cutest thing ever and has a great cookbook. I have some meal suggestions that I'm basically going to do out of both of these books today. So first thing I do getting started when I have a cook day is I obviously go grocery shopping. I pick up a lot of my fruits and vegetables, and I pick up my meats, and then I get in the kitchen and get prepared to get started. First item on the agenda is to get all of the veggies chopped. I will have veggies prepped in bags, pre-prepared and ready to go. Some of my food I'm going to pre-roast. Some I'm going to put in the freezer. Some I'm going to put in the fridge. On weeks that I'm doing a lot of my sauces, maybe putting some stuff up in the freezer when I have extra time, I can spend 4 to 8 hours in the kitchen. because some weekends I maybe only get an hour or two at best, if I get that. So I try and do as much as I can on those weekends, and I do it in bulk. So first things first, let me move these out of the way. After I've got all my veggies prepped, one of the things I like to do, and this was from the Well Fed cookbook, is I brine my chicken. I hate dry chicken. My family hates dry chicken, and I have found that by brining it ahead of time, it really does make a huge difference. That and cooking it fast and cooking it at a higher heat. So one of the things I do first, bowl with real salt in it. Kosher salt is best if you can. I also like the Real Salt brand. Water. So I'm going to go ahead. Normally I'm doing about 6 to 8 breaths at a time when I'm prepping this. Today I'm only going to do 2 because I already pre-prepped the other breaths so that they would be ready to show. I get at Whole Foods, sometimes I'll get the organic chicken. I get the 3-pack. When it's on sale at New Seasons, I'll stock up on chicken breasts. So essentially what I have in here is salt and water. So it just makes salt water. I like diving in it too. But today, the chicken's taking a dive. So I'm going to put that chicken in there. I'm going to stick this in the fridge. And I'm going to let it sit for about 2 hours. That salt water is going to help tenderize the chicken, and then I will come back to it in 2 hours. So this is one of the first things I do so I can stick it away. The next thing I'm going to do after I get the chicken in the salty bath is get ready for my mayo. Mayo, for me, I find it works best at room temperature. Another tip I got from Well Fed. I like her recipe. She does it in a blender. I like the convenience of doing it in an immersion blender. It's easier to clean up. So I will put my 2 tablespoons of lemon juice in my blender beaker. My egg, I'm going to crack that. And pop it in with the lemon juice. Then I'm going to use a 1/2 teaspoon of pure mustard. And a 1/2 teaspoon of real salt. Same thing I used in the salty bath. So lemon juice, egg, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of mustard are going on the bottom of the beaker. All of these things are room temperature. Most predominantly, the lemon juice and the egg is best when it's at room temperature. And then also the olive oil. Melissa suggests using cheap olive oil. I actually like the Trader Joe's. This is a little bit lighter colored olive oil. It makes for a prettier mayonnaise. The darker olive oils kind of look a little different, and I like my mayonnaise to be light colored. You're going to need about 1 cup to 1.25 cups of this oil. So I'm just going to go ahead and add 1 cup of my olive oil. This is exciting. So 1 cup of olive oil, and then about 1/4 more. I want this to be room temperature before I stick the immersion blender in. And since I've let it sit out already, pre-preparing for this video, it's ready to go into mayo. Now I make my own mayonnaise because if you look at pretty much every brand of mayonnaise at the grocery store, they either have one of two things that I avoid. They either have soy or they have sugar or corn syrup of some sort in them. Your mayonnaise, like seriously. I make all of my sauces directly out of the mayonnaise. I put the immersion blender in all the way to the bottom and hold it on. I'm not going to do it because it's really loud, but essentially you just want to put your immersion blender in, hold it, the mayo will start to grow up, and as soon as it's almost to the top and has eaten most of the olive oil, you can slowly start to raise the blender out until all of the olive oil is blended in. When it's done, it serves as a fantastic base for lots of sauces. In our house, we go through this like crazy. This is sriracha mayo. So essentially it's the mayo base, and I use Paleo Chef. This is their sriracha. It's awesome. I have homemade sriracha before. It's also very delicious, and it can also be very painful if you're not careful and wear gloves when you're cutting up the peppers, because it takes like 20 or more peppers to make a bottle of sriracha. So Paleo Chef is a great brand. They don't put any sugar. They use honey for sweetness. Awesome. I believe Whole Foods as well as New Seasons carries it. Now, as far as your mayonnaise expiration date goes, what you want to look at is your eggs. The fresher your eggs are, the better. The expiration date that's listed on your eggs is what the expiration date should be for your mayonnaise. So I mark my jars what they are. Everybody knows where the sriracha mayo is. It sits in the door. The other thing I like to make with my mayonnaise base is all of my dressings. Now I do buy a couple of the Paleo Chef's dressings, but one of our favorites comes out of Well Fed too, and it is a Euro dressing that we use with the lamb that I make. I went ahead and pre-prepped all my herbs. This has got parsley, Aleppo pepper, mint, some za'atar spice, salt, garlic. The recipe, you can find it actually on her webpage as well as in her cookbook. So there's lemon juice in here with all of the herbs. It's just been kind of sitting. And I'm going to add mayo to that, and it will make the dressing that we use for the deconstructed gyros. And it's some of our favorite dressing. It's very flavorful. Life's too short for not having flavor. So salty bath, mayo, some of the first things I do, let it sit for an hour or two. And then the next thing I'm going to go on to prepping is some of my meat. We love the lamb. Not everybody likes lamb. You can do this with beef stew as well, or beef stew meat as well. It tends not to be as tender as the lamb. The lamb is fall apart, yummy, melt in your mouth, and the flavoring is amazeballs. Yes, amazeballs. So for that, in Melissa's cookbook, she actually suggests putting it, all the spices and stuff, in a Ziploc bag, shaking it up, putting the lamb in, shaking that with. Nobody's got time for that. So I get all my spices in my pot. I also don't get out my measuring spoons anymore to measure. I will basically, about a dime to a nickel size is about a half a teaspoon, to a quarter size is a full teaspoon, to a little mound in my palm is usually a tablespoon, and that's what I go with. I don't specifically measure unless I'm baking. That's the only time I will specifically measure quantity of what I'm putting in. So I have cumin, I have garlic salt, I have mint, Aleppo pepper in here. I still need to add the salt and the pepper. And I will demonstrate my very technical way of measuring. So about a half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of pepper. This will be a surprise for those of you that know me and I'm super OCD. Yeah, I don't measure this stuff. And salt. About a teaspoon, a heaping teaspoon, since I have 3 pounds of lamb stew meat. If they don't have lamb stew meat out at your butcher, they usually will have lamb steaks that they'll chop up for you if you ask. So with those spices, then I'm just going to kind of swirl them around in the pan to get them all mixed in. And then I'm going to take my lamb, and this is going straight in the pot. See, all nice and diced up. They didn't have lamb stew meat, so they cut up 3 steaks for me, and it made about 3 pounds worth. So I'm going to pop that in. And then I'm just going to break it apart because it's all kind of stuck together. And spread those spices around onto the meat. And sometimes when I'm feeling really wild and reckless, I'll actually kind of flip it around. So once I get all of that seasoning spread around the meat, kind of coated on there, then I'm going to add lemon juice and water. So the lemon juice, again, it's supposed to be, I think, about 3 tablespoons. So 1, 2, 3. And since I have an extra pound, because the recipe is for 2 pounds, we'll say 4.5. So there's our lemon juice. And then the next thing we're going to add is water. We're going to add water up just to cover the meat, and then we're going to put it on high, bring it to a boil. It takes about 2 hours to cook down. So hang tight, I'll be back. I'm going to go put this on the stove. All right, so that is on one of the burners. I have it on high. As soon as it comes to a boil, I'm gonna turn it down so it's at a bubbling simmer, but not boiling anymore. And in about 2 hours, it'll go from, as Melissa says, looking like Dickens stew to being this really tender, very delicious, fall apart in your mouth lamb meat. I use it on the deconstructed Euro salad, so we'll do fresh lettuce, cucumber, Kalamata olives, some red onion, and then our Euro dressing, which I made fresh from the Mayo. You can also add some Roma tomatoes. It's a very delicious meal, and that 3 pounds will serve my husband and I for at least 2 to 3 meals, both of us. So you can adjust depending on how many you have to feed for your family. So the next piece that I'm going to get on is pork. And much like the lamb meat, I get all of my spices prepared in my Itso pot, or my Instant Pot. I have discovered the joy of pressure cooking. It's fabulous. I used to put this pork on, I'd put a pork roast on 3 to 4 pounds, and it would take a good 24 hours to cook to get it nice and tender, to start getting kind of fall apart juicy. Now I don't even bother with that anymore. I asked the butcher to cut the roast down, so I'll get a 3, 4, 5 pound pork roast, pork shoulder, and then have them cut that down into 3 to 4 inch sections. I put it in my pot with my seasonings, my lemon juice, and my water, and sometimes I like to use lime juice as well. In this pot for spices, I have Aleppo pepper, salt, cumin, a little bit of onion powder, garlic powder. I also put in a little bit of citrus peel. The Penzi Spices has basically a citrus. They have an orange peel that is already dehydrated. You can toss that in with your pork and it'll give it a really nice flavor. I'm kind of doing almost like a carne type flavored pork roast. I've also got a lot of smoked paprika in here. So just like I did with the lamb, I'm going to kind of swirl those spices together. And then I'm going to take my pork that the butcher cut down for me. And I'm going to toss that in. Now some weeks I'll also make fish, but essentially I have 6 to 8 chicken breasts. I've got 3 pounds of lamb meat, and I've got about 4 pounds of pork here. That's going to be more than enough for the week. In fact, I should be able to put some of this up in the freezer after it's already cooked and save it for another week when I don't have as much time as I did this weekend, which is kind of what my first 3 weeks of, or first 2.5 weeks of this year has been. Very busy, and so I didn't have the time. So it's pulling from the freezer a lot. So just like I did with the lamb, I'm going to kind of spread those spices around. Do this at your own risk. You might end up snorting some salt if you're not careful. So I get the spices spread around. Then I'm going to add a little bit of lemon juice. I'm also going to grab a little bit of lime juice. I'm in the mood for some lime. And then I'm going to add a little bit of water because with the Instant Pot you want to have some water in there as well. I just put about 1/3 cup. Again, I'm not measuring it, just enough so that there's some moisture in the bottom of the pot. I'm going to put this in the Instant Pot for about 30 minutes. 20 to 30 minutes is about all you need. It takes a little bit longer than that between pressurizing and heating up. But then when this is done, I will put it in a container in the refrigerator and some of it in the freezer. And then what I can do is, as I need it for a meal, I'll take out some, separate the fat off of it that's cooked down, and then put it in a skillet and kind of caramelize it up with whatever onions, mushrooms, peppers that I'm using for that recipe. And it tastes delicious. So this is going in the pot. I will leave the camera running so that you can see me setting the Instant Pot. If you don't have a pressure cooker, this thing is the bomb diggity. I have not made rice in it. You're supposed to be able to make rice in it, but I've heard that it's not the best rice maker. We don't need to eat a lot of rice anyway. My daughter does, but she got a rice cooker specifically for Christmas. So the pot goes on, makes a nice fun little noise. I'm just going to put it on manual, 30 minutes. I just leave it, it goes. When it's done, it'll let me know it's ready, and I have a lid for it. It goes right into the refrigerator. So let's talk a little bit about vegetables. My husband wasn't real keen on Brussels sprouts until I started making them by roasting them. And roasting vegetables can sometimes take a vegetable that some people don't like and actually make it flavorful enough that they can enjoy it. Obviously, not everybody. I still have yet to get my other mother to try Brussels sprouts because she says she doesn't like them, but I think she might like mine. We'll see. So with all the food prep, I like cutting the Brussels sprouts in half, especially the big ones. Actually, I make my husband do it whenever I can. With roasting vegetables, I will either use extra virgin olive oil or coconut oil. So I'm going to just go ahead and drizzle some olive oil in here. I go through this like crazy. Trader Joe's garlic salt. Again, not measured. A little bit of Hawaiian red sea salt. Gotta have a little aloha in every bite. And then it kind of depends on what I'm in the mood for. Sometimes I'll go sweet, sometimes I'll go spicy, sometimes I'll do both. This time I'm going to add just a little bit of red pepper. My husband's pretty sensitive to spice, so I don't usually use too much. I'm going to put in a little spice. Another staple I use a ton of, coconut aminos. Since I don't do soy sauce, coconut aminos taste very much like soy sauce, but no soy. So, again, not measured. There's the coconut aminos, and then a little bit of Hawaiian honey that I brought back from Maui. And I'm going to squeeze a little bit of the honey in there. Now, if you're doing a Whole30, you can omit the honey. Just use your coconut aminos. You can use the spice to taste if you don't want too much spicy. You can also use a balsamic vinegar. Balsamic vinegar, when it reduces, it will give it a little bit of sweetness taste. I hear the lamb boiling, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that down. It's all about multitasking. So I've turned it down to about half, and that will continue to cook for about 2 hours. So now with my Brussels sprouts, new Get It Right spatula, thanks Ro for my Christmas present. So I'm going to just mix up the coconut aminos, the olive oil, the little bit of honey, and the seasoning. And then those are going to go on a silicone mat on a cookie sheet and roast in the oven. I usually set it at about 400 degrees, and stuff will go in anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes. It just depends on what I'm roasting. Brussels sprouts, usually 15 to 20 minutes is enough, just when they start to get that golden tinge to them. So this one's going to go on this mat. Spread that out. And I put the little leaves in that fall off the Brussels sprout as well, because they make really kind of yummy chips. I know some of you are like, Brussels sprouts, yummy, in the same sentence. I don't think so. But really, they are pretty good. My family will nosh on them and enjoys them. Even my daughter, who can sometimes be a little bit picky, although she's a pretty good eater. So I'm going to just go ahead and graze it a little bit more with the garlic salt blend. Just a light cracking. And then that's going to go in the oven, and I'll keep an eye on it about 15 minutes. I dropped some Brussels sprout. Okay, so the other thing that we eat a little bit of in this household is sweet potatoes. We also eat a little bit of red potatoes. So when I do my veggie prep and we cut up potatoes, you'll notice this one is in water. And the reason I put it in water is it helps reduce some of the starch in the potatoes, and it keeps them from being sticky when you roast them. So this basically has just been sitting for several hours in water after I cleaned them, chopped them. And I'm just going to use my colander. Drain those out. And then I'm planning on putting those roasted with some olive oil and some rosemary. I have some fresh rosemary. So rosemary, a little bit of the garlic seasoning, some olive oil. I will roast it ahead. I will probably split that about half and half, keep half of it out for a meal this week, put the other half in the freezer for another meal next week. Same thing with the sweet potatoes. These have already been soaked and rinsed. With these, I like to use the coconut oil. It adds a little bit of sweetness to kind of go with the sweet potato. This is a trick I learned doing nails. Hold your spatula up to the jar and you can kind of use it as a spout. So I'm pouring in a little bit of coconut oil. That way it doesn't end up running down the jar. You can use regular honey if you like. I also get some granulated honey. It's kind of nice for a good equal dispersion and it's not as sticky going in. And then of course we have to have some Hawaiian red sea salt. Just a little bit to mix in because then I'm also going to salt it just on top of the tray once I get it all mixed in. So I'm going to get that spread around. These are really great roasted and good for when you need carbs for a hard workout. We like to put over easy eggs on top of our sweet potatoes that we've roasted. I'll put them in the pan and heat them up with just a little bit of coconut oil or some ghee, and then make the eggs and put them over top. So that's going to go on a pan and it's going to roast. These take a little bit longer, whereas the Brussels sprouts are maybe 15 minutes. These are probably going to be in the oven for about 30. Again, I'm going to watch them for when they start getting golden brown. So once I get all that coconut oil kind of spread around and the honey granules spread around, I'm going to put that on one of my big pans. These silicone liners are not just for bakers, they're awesome for fast, easy cleanup. One of the very first things I made was a prosciutto egg cup, and I did it in my muffin tin. I spent probably an hour trying to clean that thing. Ever since then, I have gotten silicone liners for anything and everything that I possibly can. I highly recommend them. They make for fast and easy cleanup. So these potatoes are just gonna go here on